Hey everybody, it's Dr. Osborne back with another episode of Is It Gluten Free? And today we're going to be tackling the question of coffee. Is coffee gluten free? Now, before you get all bent out of shape and turn the video off and run away, it's important that you understand I'm not trying to take away your coffee. So that's not what this video is about. It's not a scare tactic. It's not sensationalism. I want you to understand how coffee may be a danger to you, and if you're on a gluten-free diet or trying to follow a gluten-free lifestyle. So let's dive in. So coffee is gluten-free. Step one, I want you to understand that there is no gluten technically in coffee. Coffee bean is gluten-free. So let's just get that out of the way. And don't turn it off now. Don't ignore this. So let's talk about some things. Quality matters. So what I mean by quality matters is not necessarily like, was this bean like roasted in a special certain way? What I'm really talking about is how the bean was grown. So organic is what you're after. When it comes to coffee, you want to avoid the pesticides. And remember that pesticides are a huge problem in coffee growing. So if you're buying the non-organic varieties, you're exposing your gut to massive quantities of pesticides on a daily basis, one of them being Roundup or glyphosate, which has already been shown in one trial, actually a couple different trials now, to be a cause of lymphoma. So, terminal lymphoma, it can kill you. That's a disease that can kill you. So you want to avoid the pesticides. And so you want to buy organic coffee. That's one thing that you want to take away from this video. Now, in addition to that, you should understand that mold and mycotoxin issues are common with coffee beans. So if you are mold sensitive, if you are mold allergic, if you have major mold allergy problems, coffee may not be the best beverage of choice for you. And so you just want to keep that in mind. Now, additionally, many coffees are contaminated with mycotoxin, and mycotoxins aren't a great idea either. If you get heavy enough doses over time, remember those are carcinogens and they can pose a real threat to human health. So the mold and the mycotoxin issue, if you've got mold sensitivity or you've got a past history of mold-induced illness, this probably is not going to be the best beverage of choice for you. But the other big factor here is, what do people put in coffee? Predominantly dairy, right? And if you saw this video that I put together on dairy dangers for the gluten sensitive, if you haven't watched that, go check that out because it'll help elaborate and it'll help really shed the light on why dairy might be a bad idea or which kinds of dairy are a really bad idea. Because right now there are a couple of different trends. Like one, it was not really a trend to put dairy in your coffee, but it's a trend right now to put butter in your coffee, and that may be a horrible idea too. Again, go watch that video on dairy dangers for the gluten sensitive. I won't dive into that in this particular video. But again, it's not even just about the dairy, because some of you also put like these pre-done, like sugary, syrupy coffee adders into your coffee. You go over to the local shop and you have the mocha Swiss swirl latte with like 12 pounds of sugar poured in it. That's not good for you. I don't care who you are. And if you're following that type of lifestyle, I can't help you, and this video isn't for you if you're not willing to admit that that's a problem. But let's go on to the next thing, which is those of you who are trying to follow a gluten-free diet, and some of you listening, you might be new to it, and some of you might be veterans. But the ones that are new, I want you to really pay attention here. Long years of gluten-induced damage lead to an inflamed gut. And if you've got an inflamed gut, coffee might not be the best idea for you, because coffee can exacerbate an already inflamed gut. So it's not that if you've got a nice healthy gut that coffee is going to exacerbate that. It's that if you've already got a problem, right? And this is why coffee is an irritant for people with ulcer disease. This is why coffee is an irritant for a lot of people who have a leaky gut problem. So keep that in mind. Now, many who go gluten-free initially are at greatest risk. Like I was saying earlier, if you're new to the diet, your gut's probably already damaged. And so dumping a bunch of coffee on it is not going to do any favors for you in trying to allow your gut to heal. One of the other problems is malnutrition. So if you're new to the diet, you're probably malnourished. You probably have vitamin and mineral deficiency because your gut's damaged and you've had, a number of years of malabsorption of vitamins and minerals. And so again, coffee might not be the best idea for you at this moment in time. So again, keep that in mind. So here's what some of the research says. This is a study done, and we're talking here about too much coffee. So in this particular study, you can see the impairment of gastroduodenal mucosal barrier by coffee. So what does that mean? What's that saying? It's basically saying that in this particular study, heavy coffee use was associated with damage to the gastrointestinal mucosa. And so if you're drinking, if you're the person that has the pot a day, right? So, one of the things I always ask people is how much coffee do you drink if they tell me they drink coffee? Because the answer varies from person to person. Sometimes person says 1 cup, and then, you say, well, what size is the cup? And then they make a big, huge gap with their hands, indicating that the cup is like the big 72 ouncer, right? So that's a pot of coffee. That's not a cup. A cup is 6 ounces. So if you're that habitual coffee drinker swilling down 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cups a day, this is for you. That's too much coffee. That's going to impair your gastrointestinal barrier. That's going to break it down. So again, remember, too much can be a bad thing. And one of the reasons it can happen is because coffee is very acidic. Another reason is that high dosing of caffeine we know can exacerbate and break down the gut barrier. And especially if you're mixing it with aspirin. If you're mixing it with aspirin plus caffeine equals a synergy that can strip away your mucosal lining. And, if you're taking aspirin, for example, if you've got cardiologist telling you to take a baby aspirin every day, but you're also drinking a pot of coffee every day, this is who I'm talking to. So be very, very careful in that regard. Now, here's another study that was published by a good friend of mine, Dr. Risto Vajani. And what they found in this study was that coffee had cross-reactivity with gluten. That doesn't happen to everybody, but it can happen. And so you want to be aware that coffee, again, if you're gluten sensitive, it may be the wrong move for you. Now, what they found in this research study that I really want to elaborate on, because the whole study is not listed here, but what I want to elaborate on is what they found and what they thought about the coffee wasn't really that the coffee was creating a gluten-like reaction. It's that the coffees that were being researched and studied were actually these instant coffees. That powdered coffee that you just dump in the cup and then pour hot water on top of it. That powdered coffee can have gluten in it. Some of the brands actually contain malt, which is a byproduct of barley. And that's going to get you in trouble if you're following a gluten-free diet. Now, one of the other things is that some of these products are actually just cross-contaminated with gluten, meaning they have cross-contamination issues in their manufacturing facility. And so in these cases, if you're drinking an instant coffee, you need to be aware that cross-contamination and that gluten-like reaction can occur as a result of that. So you might want to look and check the brand that you're using. If it's an instant brand, call the manufacturer, make sure that that brand is not doing damage to you through that cross-contamination. All right, so the bottom line, pretty simple. Coffee is gluten-free. Many brands of instant coffee are cross-contaminated with gluten, so call your manufacturer. Number 3, what you put in your coffee makes a difference. So if you're putting all the junk in your coffee, including the dairy, check your dairy and check that video on dairy so that you can get it straight. Now, number 4, some people's immune systems treat coffee like gluten, and if yours is one of them, coffee is probably not going to be a good choice for you. And then number 5, too much coffee, no matter who you are, can damage your gut. So if you're the pot-a-day drinker, you can create damage to your gut. It's too much. It's excessive. Remember the law of toxicity states anything in high enough quantities can become toxic. Too much coffee fits in that category. So keep these things in mind. Remember, I'm not trying to take away your coffee. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe below. And also let me know, how do you do with coffee? Your answer might help somebody else make a better decision about their health. And don't forget to come join us over at glutenfreesociety.org, the largest gluten-free community in the world. We'd love to have you sign up for our gluten-free survival kit and get educated. This is Dr. Osborne, founder of Gluten Free Society. We'll see you in the next video.